Hi, everyone. I'm James Garbutt,
And I'm Denny Dumas.
and this is the Garbutt Dumas Real Estate Podcast.
Vinny from Sage Construction was so good in the first episode. We had him back for number 2. And this one is all going to be about City of Vancouver, dealing with permits, what that process is like dealing with the city, potentially get into some zoning and some density and what the City of Vancouver is looking for long-term in terms of density. But here we go. I'm excited.
The city of Vancouver is notable for being a challenging market to build in. It seems like when I look at your portfolio on the website, Sage Construction, that's largely what you do. So I think it would be good for any listeners that are contemplating a build in Vancouver proper, because every city is different. Every city has a different reputation. But Vancouver's reputation is they're ahead of the curve on a lot of things. Energy, long permit process. So how about you share some of the challenges that are most common that people run into when they're building in the city of Vancouver, working with the city and getting going?
Sure. So I would say the biggest challenges that we notice are just the preparation process, the planning process. Often we'll meet with a client and they'll come in and we'll be talking about expected, timelines and things like that in the initial meetings. And most people just have no idea that we kind of suggest to people, if you purchase a lot, a house, the best thing to do would probably be either move in or rent it out for a year, and work on it for the year, because I haven't seen somebody be able to get their permit in less than a year in the city of Vancouver, and now the reason for that is the bureaucracy in the city of Vancouver. Like, it takes a certain process to get it through the city. But another reason is often when people are going in to design their custom home, they think the design process is really simple also. And the design process sometimes is more complicated in the way of they have an idea in their head of what they want this thing to look like. But an architect or a draftsman has to put it on paper. And as it's coming onto paper, there's going to be all sorts of questions about, what if we move this? What if we do this? What if we do that? And so I think that comfortably, somebody should be thinking that process is probably taking about 6 months. It could take
The design process.
to be able to get your plans ready to prepare the package to get to the city. So the design process, I would say, is your architect designing your house and drawing your house and giving you the anywhere between 6-page plan to 50-page plan, depending on which architect you go with.
And that comes down, just to be clear here, you can have $10,000 plans and you can have $100,000 plans. And,
sure.
and it just comes down to the detail with, all the detail.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then once you have those plans done, and the architect has then got that plan okayed by the city, that the city thinks that this is a good house that they would be able to look at and you'd be able to move it through the process. Now you send those plans out to the structural engineer, to an arborist, depending on to the energy consultant. Sometimes there's electrical engineers and mechanical engineers. On single-family homes, often there's not. So if we're just talking single-family homes now, often you don't need that unless there's some sort of something specific you're looking for. But you need to start sending it out to the professionals to be able to give their sign-offs, and that process. I mean, that process could take a month to 2 months as well, depending on how quickly they're available to start and things like that. And then once you get it into the city, I assume in the city, you're just thinking it's going to take 6 months, and it could take a little bit more or a little bit less, depending on how prepared you are to get back to them right away. Sometimes the city will get back to you or get back to the architect, and if it takes 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get back to them, that's just 2 or 3 lost weeks. Whereas if you can get back to them in a day, now I'm not even suggesting getting it back to them in a day is a good thing, because you might need to get it back and think about it and look about it, talk about it, and before you get back to them. But it's just the reality of the time frame.
So just to help paint the picture of the process, because I think it was good to touch on it. When you buy that house that you're going to knock down to build a new one,
Yeah.
the suggestion here is to let's assume that they're going to knock it down so they have a place to live. Let's assume they put a tenant in there. If you put a tenant in there for 1 year and your design process is 6 months, you still, like that tenant arguably could be there for 18 months or 2 years in a lot of scenarios,
Right.
with a 13-month lead time with the city. And you're talking about a 6-month design process, depending on the build. I think the range that I've seen is 3 months to 12.
Yeah.
I mean, the more customized the build, the higher in the neighborhood, the more likely it's going to be longer than 6 months. But of course, someone that's in the business can turn them around quick. So just little tips. When you buy that home that you're going to knock down for a new one, get it tenanted for that time, and prep that tenant for asbestos testing. You know, they're gonna move into the home, and you're gonna say, I'm gonna have to take samples of those walls, and I'm gonna knock some holes in the floor. So that can be a surprise for some tenants. So just prep them for that. And then outside of that, there's arborist reports that you're going to need, and surveys. So you're going to have a surveyor come and survey the lot, which I feel the cost of a survey has gone up in these times. And the arborist reports, and then you have the architect or home designer that does the plans.
Right.
And then from that, what professional? There's an energy consultant. Is there mechanical? List off all those professionals leading up to that issuance of permit.
Right. So there's the QP, which is who tests the hazmat. So he's not the person who's removing the hazardous material, but you have to have a QP on file to test the hazmat, and then also to finalize it after it's been removed that the house is clean. There is the energy consultant, who is just going to tell you if your house is airtight enough and if the insulation values are up to code. There's the structural engineer is the big one, and then the survey. Other than that, it depends on the job. For a single family home, you don't have to have an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer. Once you start getting into multifamily, those are required. And then on some single family homes, they do use them, and on some they require them for certain reasons, depending on what's being asked for, things like that.
If this is not your area of expertise, you can say pass and we'll move on. But
sure.
The heritage stuff in Vancouver, and recycling heritage material, do you know what those guidelines are for older homes that you're tearing down?
So I believe it's pre-1940. You have to. So I can't remember what the cutoff is, but there's a certain home that you have to recycle to 90%, and a certain home that you have to recycle to 75%. I can't remember the year on which one's 90 and which one's 75. But all that means is somebody has to go in and demo the house by hand. They have to remove all the materials by hand, and then each material has to go to a different place. So obviously, like pipes and wires and things like that are going to separate places. The wood is going to a separate place. The concrete's going to a separate place. And so that has to be taken down by hand. Once the house is taken apart by hand, a machine can now crunch up the wood and just separate the wood and concrete.
Do you know approximately what the extra cost is for recycling all those materials comparatively to like an older home in Surrey that you're just demolishing?
I would say that the difference in cost is in the a big part of that depends on the hazmat, on the asbestos testing.
Course,
but I know that's not
Let's
recycling.
say it's clean. Let's just say it's clean.
Say it's completely clean, although no house before. No, but sir, just to like take the hazmat out.
So it's never clean.
but also sometimes it's really low. Like sometimes maybe like we've seen it just in the duct tape. It seems like now we're seeing more and more in you know what? It's just so different house to house. I want to say we're seeing it more and more, but it's just because of the last couple houses we've worked on. That's the last thing in my head. So say it's clean. It's probably a $20,000 to $30,000 difference.
To recycle,
and depending on the size of the old house, like some of these old houses, it's not that much of a difference. Say if it would have cost $8,000 just to crunch up the house, it's probably $25,000 or something like that to actually pull it apart by hand and then crunch it up. So maybe it's a $20,000 difference approximately.
And I guess touching on heritage, because I think I know in certain zones, if you work with the existing home, you get a little more buildable space. And if you knock it down, you don't.
Right.
Are you having many conversations with clients about that equation, whether they knock down and build new or whether they work with the existing.
Yeah. Yeah. We are having so many people coming and asking what they're allowed to do to their single family home.
Yeah.
And because in the city of Vancouver, you can, I believe any lot can be a duplex now. Now I could be wrong. I could be wrong about that that's actually passed and it's any, or maybe there's a stipulation on which ones, but that is, lots of lots now can become duplexes. And there are a significant amount of lots that you can turn into triplexes, fourplexes, fiveplexes. And just for example, there's one that we're just finishing or just finished that they had to keep the house. So they had to give the city something and keep the heritage aspect. So the house had to be raised. It got raised, moved, a new foundation got built. The house got dropped back down onto the new foundation. The addition was then built and built a laneway house. So in that situation, but it was worth it to the client because they were able to get a threeplex plus a laneway. And so they stratified this.
Was the laneway the fourth unit? Is that what?
That was the fourth unit.
Wow.
So they got a threeplex plus I believe it's called a coach house in this situation, but we can get into the differences between infill, coach house, lane, like
Carriage.
it doesn't like, it almost is irrelevant to you or me even, but on what it's called.
Now, is that the example you're providing, is that all under one title or is that stratified?
That one is stratified.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Is that a 33, a 50 frontage?
Yeah, that one was over 50-foot lot. It was an over 50-foot lot. I can't remember what it was exactly, but it was over a 50-foot lot. So they were able to build about 5,000 square feet plus a 1,500 square foot laneway house.
6,500.
Yeah.
So it's almost one FSR.
Yeah.
Just shy, maybe.
It's around there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Kitsilano stands out as an area where these types of builds are prominent. So if someone's considering doing a project like this on, say, a 33 by 120 or a 50 by 120, is the stratification from what I've seen is usually involves restoring old.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the first question is how many units is pretty common or works well, in your opinion, for a 33 lot, and how many units works well for a 50 lot, 50-foot lot?
So we're seeing lots of people. Just now building a house with a suite, and then a coach house or a laneway house. So we're seeing lots of that, and that's something where somebody's probably living in the house, whereas the one that we talked about, it was being stratified. I would say any 33-foot lot, if you're doing it that way. The problem is if you're doing a 33-foot lot and you want to make it a duplex, now you've got a really skinny house. Yeah. So you've got really skinny living units. So probably doing it as the main house with a basement suite and a laneway house is probably up, I assume up down.
Yeah.
Because anytime you're going side to side on that 33, it just becomes a really skinny house now.
Yeah. No, I just to be clear, because we kind of use jargon here a little bit, but oftentimes for the duplex zone on 33, they would, and there's fire separation. They're like completely separate units where a duplex is not always a side-by-side living situation. It can be front, back. It can be up, down.
Right.
It's getting more and more creative, and the term is getting more and more broad.
For sure.
I think that's pretty cool that the city is going in the direction of, say, 5 units, 7 units, 3 units. I've actually seen some of your plans and renderings, and boy, they look pretty special. Like it's always nice when there's, instead of having a street lined with $3 and $4 million homes, that home has $1.2, $1.5 million options that are suitable for young families or couples or whoever lives there. What are you seeing as the cost of, like, if you're doing a 50 by 120 and you go aggressive with trying to get 5 units on it? Is the price per foot or the costs involved significantly more than doing your typical custom built single family home?
Yeah. So, and a few of the costs to be aware of when you're doing that, when you're going to, I'd say 4 would be the time when you have to really start thinking about it, and then 5, you probably can't get away with not doing this. Is having a pad mounted transformer. So we're talking about electrical. So rather than the electrical just running straight from the street to the house, you have to have a transformer on your property. And so this is a pad mounted, so it's mounted on the ground. There's nothing underground, and then the power is coming into that transformer and running to your house from that transformer. And this is something that could potentially add $100,000 to your build. So you're probably going underground to this transformer. So the cost to get it underground across the lane or across the street to your transformer, you're paying the city to dig it up. You're paying hydro to run it. So that's a significant cost. The cost of the transformer, and then now you probably have a 400 amp service in the house.
I was just going to ask you how big that would be.
Yeah. So you're probably you probably have a 400 amp service in the house. If we're still talking these lower, multifamily, 4 units, 5 units, you're probably having a 400 amp service in the house now.
What would be the build out time period of that compared to, say, a single family? Like, I mean, is it a 13-month build? Is it an 18-month build?
I think that you're probably adding a couple months to a few months overall. Because when you're actually framing this house, for example, we're about to start one that is, it was a duplex. It's being completely torn down. So this duplex had character merit, but it's not under the heritage. So in Vancouver, calling it character merit means in this situation, it meant that they could tear the house down, but the city had to tell them the type of a house that they could build. They couldn't just build any style of a house, but they're able to get 5 units out of it. So if they build it the way the city asks them to build it, so it's going to be 5 units. And I assume that the time frame is going to be, so it's going to be longer than a single family home, but there's also probably less emotions involved in building the house. Yeah. So some of the picking of finishes will probably be able to go faster, but the initial the initial part of the building will take longer. So I assume that, if we're saying a single family home is in the 13-month range, depending on how quickly you can pick your finishes, I would say that this is probably going to be 14 plus. And it's and at the end of the day, it'll probably be all finished and ready to move in. That there's actually this one is they're going to be renting it out. That there's renters able to live in there within about 16 months. Hopefully, is what the goal is.
So, for a buyer looking to do a project like this, I bought one. I think I'm excited to see more of these hit the market because I think that is the future. A very tentative timeline might be you pick up a lot, you stick a tenant in there, you give yourself, let's say, just a year and a half for plans and the city process. Cities with a year to 12 to 13 months, plans call it 6 months.
Sure. The only thing I'd say different about this is now when you're redeveloping the lot, you have to get a development permit. So I would say that this process is not like building a single family home. And when I say single family home, doing the house plus basement suite plus laneway is in that single family home range. Yeah. Whereas now you're going to 5 units, you're building it. It's being built differently. It's going through a different department of the city. It's not just going through.
There's 2 stages of approval there. Is that right? Development, then building. Is that correct?
Well, it's not as clean as you think that you just you get your development permit, now you can start your building permit. Yeah. For example, the house is about to start. Hazmat removals are starting next week, and the development permit. We just got the development permit.
Okay,
but they had issued the salvage and abatement permit before that. And the building permit they're saying is coming any day. So, we don't need the building permit. You can't get the building permit until the old house is actually down and demoed, and it's a clear lot. Because once you get your demo permit signed off, is when they actually hand you your building permit. So when you say building permit, what you're thinking is probably how you start the project. Whereas I'm thinking the building permit is when they actually hand me the piece of paper that says building permit, which means that the old house is demoed and you have a clear lot and you can start digging.
Okay.
So you've started the project at that point, though.
There's certain demo and obviously abatement with hazardous material that you can do prior to building permit. Just to be clear, you mentioned 13 months for a single family home sort of timeline with the city. Are we adding a couple months for this this process of stratification? Is that 2 months, 4 months? What would you suggest? What would you estimate?
In construction? In construction, or are you saying the actual stratification process?
Sorry, we already talked about construction being an extra 2 to 4 months.
Sure, yeah.
But the wait time with the city from the moment you submit plans to the moment you get that building permit.
Yeah, I would say it's in the 2 to 3 year range.
2 to 3. Okay, so the moment you buy a home, if you're looking at doing a 5 unit,
a redevelopment, if you're doing a redevelopment,
we're ultimately talking about a 4-year horizon from when you purchase that home to when it's ready to go, and it may be longer. You might get a little bit quicker, but approximately 4 years.
Yeah, and And one of the challenges is it's how well does your architect navigate the city also, because the city is not the best at giving you a list of here's what you have to do it in order, and you can get this thing.
Yeah.
It's like a puzzle. Like you have to put this puzzle together on what you need to be able to do to be able to get your building permit. And sometimes these puzzle pieces, like you don't know what they are, and you've got to go find the puzzle piece. I'm reading Harry Potter to Nate right now, so we're trying to find all the he's trying to go like kill Voldemort, but it's like,
just to be clear, Nate is the construction site manager at his job, so he reads Harry Potter every morning to him.
Nate's our son. He's read it. He's already read it, but we're reading it together right now. So they're trying to find the Horcruxes. So I'm like, trying to find what you need to give to the city is like trying to find a Horcrux. It's like you don't really know what you're allowed to. You don't really know what you need until you start the process, and then once you start the process, because through the process, the architect's going to be like, oh, you know what? I didn't think we needed an electrical engineer, but now we're getting to this point. This other department said we need this. This triggers the fact that you need an electrical engineer on this project. That's probably, I think on a multifamily, you do need an electrical engineer anyway, but there are different things that happen where it's like, oh, well, now we need to get this. Now we need to get this. And you don't know it until something else got triggered. So that kind of adds time to the project.
It's funny. That's the way that cities like interact with consumers and people that are looking to add density and do new projects. Even our project in New West, this is off topic, but it's relevant, let's say. But I remember going into the city for our demo permit of the garage on Oakland, and they said, oh, you're missing this one document. So I left, got it, came back, 15 minutes later, gave it to the lady again, and she said, well, you don't have photos of the garage. I said, well, I was here 15 minutes ago. You didn't tell me that. She's like, well, now I need them. So I had to go, but why not just do it all together? There should be some sort of like long laundry list of items that you need.
In all fairness, they get so many people coming at them, and you're not wrong.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a culture thing, but I think building is particularly in desirable cities like Vancouver, it's low on it's not as much of a priority as, say, business.
For sure.
Business is far more of a priority because they need thriving businesses, and they have a long lineup of people that want to build homes, and some of them are experienced and can streamline the process, and some of them have no clue what they're doing. And you're basically putting the city official in the role of educating them, and you can tell that they're not really excited about that.
For example, we're dealing with one of the most experienced architects in the city right now for a single family home. This is just a single family home, and through the summer, we're like, do you have an idea on this permit? Like, just we're just trying to get a range. Just give us a ballpark range. And the answer was October 1st, it'll be done, no problem. Like that's a safe time. And so we just got a message from them a week ago saying things have changed. Like, don't expect it before January 1st. And this is somebody who knows the process as well as I know, that knows that this is someone who knows the process as well as I think as well as anybody, because they've been through it. I mean, they've probably been through it 100 times. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's probably hundreds. It's probably more than 100 times, because I think they're doing more than 5 or 10 projects a year. So, but they've been through the process so many times, and they can't answer. And it literally depends on who you talk to. And like you said, you went and you asked for something. They said you need one thing, and then you go and get it, and you come back and they say you need another. That happens multiple times through the project. And I don't know if there's anybody to blame, because we line up to build these houses, and we're not going anywhere because we want to build in Vancouver. We could just all leave and go build in Calgary or build in, right? But we want to build it. Like, we're desperate to want to build in Vancouver because
it sets the bar higher.
Yeah.
All these, I mean, it is a pain, but it is ultimately leading to higher caliber builds and higher caliber professionals doing them.
Yeah.
I know we have limited time available for you, but I do have a few more curiosities with Vancouver, because I know it has a history of being a little more progressive with building requirements. So, I mean, one quick question is, what is the current step code, and what when you're building a new home, does that change with restoring heritage homes? And is that changing next year or the year after? Where are they at with step code, and how thick is that wall?
Yeah, so this seems to be constantly changing. and the talk of it is constantly changing as well. So currently we can build a house with a 2x8 wall or a 2x6 wall with exterior insulation. So that's what we can currently build. We can use double pane glass windows, but I believe so. And different step codes like require triple pane, but the city does not require us to go to triple pane yet. And so anyway, we have to go. We can go with 2x8 walls, or we can go with 2x6 walls with exterior insulation.
And my next question would be, what is the future of natural gas in the city?
So that's something that we keep hearing. I've been hearing it for at least 5 years that natural gas is going to be extinct and not extinct. Sorry. If you have it, I don't think they're taking it away. I just can't see how that could happen.
ruthless.
I can't practically see how it can happen. Yeah, but we keep hearing that they're going to start minimizing it on what you're allowed to have natural gas in your house down to not being allowed to have natural gas in your house. So, and us as builders, just see the challenges in that in the way that now you're using electricity for everything. So, a single family home is a single family home on the west side of Vancouver probably has to have a 400 amp service now, because of all the equipment that people want in their house. Whereas currently you can have a 200 amp service. You can have gas going to your boiler, to your range, to your fireplace, to your barbecue, or you can go to your laundry. It can go to some like higher energy items that will save, and will also save you a significant amount of money in your bills as well, like your monthly bills, because the gas is, currently significantly cheaper than electricity.
Some people that I've talked to in the industry, the thought is that natural gas prices will rise over time, and eventually at some point new builds in these forward cities will restrict natural gas services. To be announced.
Yeah.
But I think you've touched on a good point of, like, in that world, when everything is electric, right now it's in a kitchen, it's really nice to have that big 6-burner Wolf range that's natural gas. And I think the trend moving forward will be more and more the induction cooktop.
Yeah.
When you have car charging needs for 2 electric vehicles, if you want a sauna or a hot tub, that's an electrical service that's pretty heavy. If you have a basement suite, like you're mentioning, new homes are 200 amp services, but 400 just seems like it is the next normal in that world of charging your cars and everything else I've mentioned. Is that where it's going?
The question of going to 400 amp service is already there with now when you're having the house, basement suite, and laneway house. So you're having a house, basement suite, laneway house. The question comes on what equipment do you have in your house? And then a calculation is being done. Does the 200 amp service work? And you can make it work now. Like it's not like you have a house, basement suite, and laneway house and you can't make it work. You can make it work, but you have to make decisions on it at this point if you have all those things.
Yeah. What would be the cost difference of going to 400 versus 200 right now?
That kind of depends if you're going overhead or underground, and the transformer. Do you have to change the transformer to get to 400? And it's different for different lots. So it could be probably as low as in the $10,000 range, or it could be as high if. Like one of the biggest costs is if it's overhead and now you're changing it to underground, so you have to dig underground across the lane or the street. You're probably adding $25,000 to $30,000 just to get the power underground to your house. But that's regardless of 200, 400. So that is something that makes a difference. I think preparing the house for 400 is not necessarily as expensive, as much of an added cost. That maybe it's all wired, prepared for maybe a 400 amp service being changed in later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found this very helpful.
100%.
Well, I think a good wrap up would be this is Vinny Dumas. The company that he works with is Sage Construction, and a lot of experience in Vancouver proper. And I guess would the best way to kind of see what you're doing is go to the website? Is that what you'd suggest? Or
I guess the best thing would be go to our website, sageconstruction.ca, or send us a message. You can go to the website and you can send us a direct message. If there's anything you want, we'd be more than happy to get back to you, to meet with you, to chat with you about your project. Talk
to them today if you're thinking of building in 2025. And I appreciate your time, and also you can reach out to us. We'll happily connect you with their team. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was fun.